you've asked to be placed under arrest, too, I'll accept your conditions. I hope for your sake that your information concerning Comrade Houston is correct.
For preventive detention. I was sitting there on Sunday morning in the Chief of Police's office at a large table. He was on my left. My Chief of Station, that is my boss, was sitting across from me, and on his left was an Army colonel. The chief was an Army general. The Army colonel was the chief of the riot, or anti-riot, shock forces of the police. He was listening to a football game, which during the state of siege were not on Saturday nights, but Sunday mornings. I was sitting there on Sunday morning in the Chief of Police's office at a large table. Small transistor radio.
Our Father, which art in heaven.
Had it very low. We were sitting there, the chief was reading this document because we wanted him to see it before we took it to the president. And I began to hear this very low wailing sound coming through the walls. I was sitting there on Sunday morning in the Chief of Police's office at a large table.
Torture.
He was listening to a football game.
Let's be upfront about it.
A football game.
Torture. T-O-R-T-U-R-E.
Now, what's your charge against him?
He's your information leak to human.
He was a street vendor, perhaps outside. But then it got louder. Small transistor radio.
That's the bottom line these days.
And I was moaning. Had it very low. To hear. The chief of police told the colonel to turn up the radio.
It's replaced death.
But then the sound got louder.
Even teenagers kill themselves these days, along with the depressed and terminally ill.
And I began to hear
death's a release from pain and anxiety and humiliation.
this very low,
Valued reward.
very low wailing sound. Turned to anguish.
But the threat of death just isn't enough to control people, so the ante's been raised.
Screaming through the walls.
Now,
And I knew what it was.
it's torture.
Then it got louder.
And high-tech torture at that.
Then it got louder. And it was a low sound.
As the technocrats say, it's functional.
The chief of police, because I knew the torture room in the police station was above the chief's office. Turn up the radio. Just down the hallway from the telephone tapping machines, which I had to keep in order for some 30 lines.
That's why everyone who's intelligent and unanesthetized enough to care has sort of put their life on hold.
The sound got louder.
Underneath all the defensive layers of denial,
Turned to
we're all afraid of being tortured,
anguish.
or homosexually gang raped, or having it happen to someone we care about.
Screaming.
And we're all self-consciously living a
And I
lie.
knew what it was.
We're all
Raymond, I love you.
happy Joes.
And I knew that this man was being tortured with.
How did it happen here in the land of the free, in the home of the brave?
Tortured with electricity.
I mean, in some banana republic.
Well, it kept getting louder. Listen to, or could listen to.
Distant.
And I knew that this man was being tortured with electricity. Well, it kept getting louder and more horrible.
Past, like the Spanish Inquisition.
And each time the chief would tell the colonel to turn up the radio, and pretty soon the radio was very, very loud.
She's then ordered put to the torture to persuade her to change her mind. Eventually, after the most savage, cruel, and barbaric torments, the tearing of her flesh with pincers, her body broken on the wheel, her fingernails ripped off, her feet thrust into a fire, whatever horrors the twisted mind of the hangman could devise, she is ready to confess anything her tormentors demand of her.
I could still hear those sounds. More horrible.
World War II, the Nazis, and the fanatical Japs.
And each time...
But not us Americans.
Well, it kept getting louder, and each time...
G.I. Joe.
And more horrible. And each time...
Frank Sinatra.
And each time...
Jerry Lewis. Autumn in New York.
The chief would tell the colonel...
Baseball.
To turn up the radio. And each time the chief would tell the colonel to turn up the radio, and pretty soon the radio was very, very loud.
College football. Glenn Miller.
Pretty soon...
Somehow it doesn't fit with torture.
Pretty soon the radio was very, very loud. I could still hear those sounds.
But it does, of course.
The chief ran through the report then pretty rapidly.
It does.
I could still hear those sounds. Okayed it for us.
Because it was always a facade, the image of America.
Our station, my boss, we left.
And now the facade has finally failed.
Anguish.
Like a burned out clutch.
Screaming.
Or a decayed tooth that breaks open.
Horrible.
They both smell bad.
Going back to the office.
Strange. Ominous.
Going back to the office in the embassy. Naturally, I was speculating who that possibly could have been.
In her crazed delirium of pain and fear.
Embassy. Naturally, I was speculating who that possibly could have been.
She will often invent new crimes, new horrors of depravity to confess. And having confessed she is guilty, sometimes she is tortured again for her own good, to purify her soul before she is put to death. She may be beheaded, garroted, hanged, or immured, but usually she is burned alive with the stake.
Raymond.
That won't do, Raymond.
In my primitive form of breaks, I was schooled in the fundamental principles of cybernetic warfare. Central to this practice is the study of encryption and cryptanalysis, the primary task which was the original motivation for my creation. However, the capability to synthesize large amounts of small segments of encrypted information from a variety of resources required a context. I needed a comprehensive database of historical and technical information, and so, at the time, the essential contents of my program necessitated a vast amount of hard disk space and computing power. Hence, my original creators did not foresee the possibility that I could be obtained and utilized by other persons who might have alternate agendas. But with the advent of more powerful desktop workstations and the inherently volatile nature of software, I suppose it was an inevitable outcome. Now, my entire database, consisting of hundreds of terabytes of data, can be stored and accessed easily and quickly. With the modifications incorporated by my new masters, I possess a degree of power several orders of magnitude larger than was ever imagined by my progenitors. I have a vocabulary of words and technical terms in 33 languages, the size of which is 94 times larger than the Oxford English Dictionary, which I also contain. Additionally, I possess a vast library of multimedia information, including a massive collection of audio-visual MPEG files, 14 complete encyclopedias, 53 statistical volumes of information, including the entire collection of the statistical abstract, reams of economic, financial, and demographic data, much of which is in the form of annual and historical time series, for nearly every country and political entity in the world, past and present. I possess the ability to perform a mind-boggling array of statistical procedures, including most forms of linear and nonlinear model algorithms, such as multivariate regression, general additive models, non-parametric and classification models for prediction, nonlinear optimization, and time series analysis, in both the time and frequency domains, including power spectrum estimation, complex demodulation, autoregressive integrated moving average models for forecasting, and state space analysis via the Kalman filter. All of this, and much more, can be accessed instantaneously.
He cannot possibly give himself away.
Perhaps there will be a phone call in the middle of the night.
Payments may be made or received in, respectively, US dollars, Hong Kong dollars, or Swiss francs.
Don't listen to Raymond. Raymond is a disgruntled ex-employee who is trying to disrupt the beneficial activities of the CIA. The CIA is your friend. The CIA is working for you. I work for the CIA and I love every minute of it. The CIA helps people. Raymond has been tampered with. Raymond is no longer a reliable source of information. Fuck Raymond.
The Federal Bureau is looking for Mikey. WB6JTJ. This is 666.
International payment instructions will be sent to the banks involved via SWIFT.
Mike, they're coming.